All right, Judges 11. Well, we're talking about labels. You guys get your donuts, get your coffee. We talked about Yiptha. We talked about labels last week. And we talked about the last 3 weeks, basically. And you had homework to read 11 and 12. So hopefully you read 11, because I'm not going to finish that. But the idea was I wanted you to see what we talked about after Yiptha. We saw his leadership skills. And in those leadership skills, we saw his education of Scripture and how he used his knowledge and education of Scripture to use diplomacy before there was a military action, before there was a military battle. Yiptha was a man who knew the Torah, he knew God, and he was a man of faith. And after he defeated one enemy, some brothers of another tribe, the Jewish tribes, came to him. And this is where we pick up our story in Judges chapter 12. There's some Bibles out here too. If you don't have your phones, there's some Bible. Paper Bibles are always good if you want to open those up. I need somebody to read 12, 1 and 2.
The men at Ephraim recalled the arms, and they crossed to Zephon and said to the shepherd, "Why did you cross over to fight against the Amorites and did not call us away with you? We will burn your house over you with fire." Jephthah said to them, "I and my people had a great dispute with the Amorites, and when I called you, you did not save me from their hand."
Ephraim comes to complain. Why didn't you call us? Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do what we think you should do? Why didn't you do it this way? Who do you think you are? Have you heard this before? You've said it before. Huh. If you've ever found yourself in leadership, you will hear these things. This is one of the hardest parts of being in leadership. It's usually not the job that's hard. It's the complaining people, the armchair quarterbacks, the people who say, "You should have done it this way. You should have done it that way. Why didn't you think of this? Why didn't you do that?" You know, people are saying this. That's usually the hardest part of the leadership position. The job's usually pretty simple. It's all the people who think you should be doing it differently, even though they wouldn't want to do it themselves. They love to complain. Verse 3, Alex.
When I saw that you would not save me, I took my life in my hand and crossed over against the Amorites. And the Lord gave them into my hand. Why then did you come up to me to say, "Fight against me"?
This is something we've talked about in leadership skills and principles at a few different places. Yiptha is a man of personal responsibility. There's a problem, and what does he do? Let's take care of it. We were being threatened, things were happening, so we're going to take care of this. We're going to mobilize, we're going to take care of this ourselves. He takes extreme ownership in this situation. He says, "This is what we're going to do. I don't need to wait on somebody. I don't live in the woulda, coulda, shoulda world." Yiptha was a man of action. He knew what needed to be done, so he did it. No matter the size of the burden. Remember, this army that he was facing was immense. It was huge. But he says, "We're going to take it." And Ephraim is now threatening him, which, remember, Ephraim is one of the largest tribes of all of Israel. And his brothers come and say, "We're going to fight you because you didn't do it our way." Yiptha says, "Okay, let's do this." What Yiptha reminds me of is an old saying from a guy named James Allen. He said, "Adversity doesn't build character. It reveals character." When times are tough, that's when you really figure out who people are. Are they the people who are going to complain and point the finger and, "Well, we could have done this, or we could have done that, or, if things would have been better," or when things are hard, are you the person who stands up and says, "All right, let's take care of this. Let's do this"? Judges 12:7. And Jephthah ruled 6 years. And Jephthah the Gileadite died, and he was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. 6 years he led. And then it continues on from there. This is where the story breaks off from Jephthah, and then it goes into a different direction, which I found fascinating. After that, it says, and after him, Ibsam of Bethlehem ruled Israel. And he came to have 30 sons and 30 daughters. And he sent abroad and brought in 30 daughters for his sons. And he ruled Israel for 7 years. So they've won a major battle. Things are good. He expands his family, his lineage, so that he can expand his influence. And then things are good. So he starts trading, basically, his children for influence and power, to make more money for the kingdom, to make more things, to expand their influence. It goes on. And Ibsam died and was buried in Bethlehem. And after him was Elon Musk, the Zebulite, who ruled Israel and ruled Israel for 10 years. And Elon, the Zebulite, died and was buried at Aelon in the land of Zebulun. Does your translation not have that? Oh, it doesn't have it up there? You're looking at me like, what does it say? His name's Elon. It's right here. So we got one guy who dies, the great leader, military strategist, leader, bravery, extreme ownership. He has somebody that takes over. He has 30 sons. They expand wealth and influence. And then all of a sudden, this guy named Ebulon comes and he rules for 10 years. But we really don't know a whole lot about him. And then it continues on after him. And after him, Abdon, son of Hillel, the Pirathonite, ruled Israel. So we have a label on this one, the son of. And he had 40 sons and 30 grandsons who rode on 70 young donkeys and ruled Israel 8 years. And Abson, son of Hillel, the Pirathite, died and was buried in Pirathon in the land of Ephraim, in the mountains of the Amalekites.
There was often things we don't have that put in the Bible that don't make sense. But why was it important that he had 70 donkeys?
Oh, I was just going to say that. Because it's there for a reason. He's given a label, right? He's the son of this Hillel guy. We don't know who that is, but clearly they did. So he's given a label. And then it says he has all these children and all these grandchildren, and they ride these 70 donkeys, right? That would be like me saying, I, have these children, and these children grow up, and then they have grandchildren, and I'm driving a Toyota Tundra, and Roman grows up, and he's driving a BMW, and then he has all these kids, and they're all driving Ferraris. Where's your sign for that? But the point of the text is saying that everything's good. This guy's wealthy. He's made money. His children have made money. And his children's children are all driving the fanciest donkeys and asses in the country, right? That's what they get. And I find that passage fascinating because this is a sign of great wealth and good times. Times are really, really good. But one thing in the Bible that we don't find is in the Torah scrolls, you don't find chapters and verses. There's no chapter 12 or 11 or 13 or verse 1 or 2. The story continues. So here's a point of good times. Everything is going well. The children and the grandchildren are riding the best donkeys and mules in the country. And then the story continues on, and the very next sentence says what, Alex? 13:1. Imagine that there was no 13 and no 1. You're just continuing to read the story.
And the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, so the Lord gave them into the hand of the Philistines 4 years.
Man, have you seen this? I've seen this now for months. Hard times create strong men. Gosh, was that not Jephthah? Strong men create good times. Because of what Jephthah did, he had these other two guys that followed behind him. Good times created weak men. These grandchildren that rode the best donkeys in the world. They had 70 of them. They didn't have to do anything for it. They just got it. And weak men create hard times. In 4 generations, it didn't take long to have somebody that was strong and brave and knew the Lord. 4 generations later, they fall back into evil, fall against the Philistines, and they fall back into slavery. I've been thinking about this chapter for a while. And like I said, I've seen this in many different ways and many different talks, and I've seen a few funerals that use this thing. And I've been thinking about this problem that we seem to struggle with in our culture today. And I've talked about it here a few times now. I've talked about how our society in general struggles with high depression, high anxiety, high suicide rates, lots of emotional and psychological trauma and illness. So I've been trying to understand what we're struggling with. And I've been studying it from many different perspectives, and I've wondered if the problem that we have, are we addressing it the right way? So this week, I spent a lot of time studying in lots of different areas. And I was reminded by the fact that Justice just got back from a Washington, D.C. trip. And I was reminded by the fact that many people don't like to leave to go to a foreign place, do they? How many people do you know that have never left St. Bernard Parish? Right? They don't like to leave. Or if they do, they only go to Disney World and they come right back. But to go any other places in any other states or any other countries, I'm not doing that. Why? What holds people back? They're comfortable? What? You're right, I have heard that. But they wouldn't know because they haven't been anywhere else, right? That's funny. I was thinking because of fear. I thought that was right on your tip of your tongue. You said food. What holds people back is their comfort, their fear a lot of times, or sometimes their fear of not having good food. But what happens when you do go somewhere? Do you not grow? Do you not come back and have learned something, whether by something you saw or something you experienced or the people that you talked to, and you come back changed just a little bit? And this happens because biologically in the brain, when you experience something new, there are new genes that open up. And it's like light bulbs that like pop on in your brain. And then all of a sudden these different light bulbs pop on and all these new things that you're experiencing and seeing. And then you come home and those light bulbs remain on. And now the things that you see during the day get function. It's like a road that instead of taking the same old road down Judge Perez, and this is where I go every day, and all of a sudden you're on a freeway and you're headed to a new place or a new town or a new city because that's how your brain works. Every time you learn something new and you grow, you turn on different light bulbs, different genes in your brain, and then all of a sudden the wiring, the paths fire and circuit, and you see the world differently because you expanded the natural genes in your brain, and it changes you. It's the old reminder of you can't get stronger unless you start lifting weights. You can sit on the couch and eat your donut and watch TV and think, I'm going to bulk up and get big. But if you don't do anything, nothing happens, right? Yeah, you'll get big. My question then to you is this: how many people live their lives devoid of challenges? How many people are resentful or angry when they find themselves in the midst of a challenge that they have to deal with? A few generations ago, maybe 5, 6 generations before your generation, Walt, there used to be a generation of people who looked at a situation or a challenge not as a problem, but as an adventure. I have to get over that river? How do we do that? I don't know, let's figure it out. As opposed to a culture that is always like, gosh, now what are we going to do? We can't do that. We'll never do that. It's never going to happen. We live in a culture that is easy. And when confronted with a challenge, we love to blame. Somebody else's fault. I'm a victim. I deserve better than this. And then this type of mentality spirals downward. And here's where I think psychology and the Bible actually meet together. Do you want to be happy? Do you want fulfillment in your life? Do you want to find joy? Then here's what you have to do. You have to be willing to pick up the heaviest weight that you can. The heaviest responsibility. You know that there's a problem, and this problem has to be met, and somebody has to do it. And so I'm going to pick this weight up, and I'm going to carry this, and I'm going to push this weight up the mountain as far as I can, because somebody has to do this responsibility, this burden. It has to be carried. And I'm going to use you. You're going to put that over your head just like this. Yep, that's it. But don't do anything until I tell you to stop. It's heavy, but it's not too heavy. It's a burden that you can carry, but you have to carry it. You have to do it because it's important. It makes a difference. It makes a difference to you. It makes a difference to the people around you. This weight has to be pushed up the hill. But here's the thing. The joy and the happiness that you'll find isn't found when you get to the top of the hill. The joy and the happiness that you'll find comes from when you look around and you see that you're making progress. You'll see that you're further up the hill than you started. You'll see that the things that you've been carrying and pushing have actually made you stronger and better. And there are actually people that are wanting to be a part of this now. That's where you find the joy. The joy doesn't come from the end. The joy comes from the process of what you are doing. Where's your brother? Man, I had this whole setup like I was going to use him right now. Clearly, he's like, oh, man. Roman, go sit next to him for a second, please. So at some point, this weight is heavy. Give Roman an arm. Put your arm. Take part of that front. Take part of it. Oh, with sound effects. Is it easier now? See, what happens when you're carrying a responsibility is difficult and it's hard, and you can do it, and it's going to find joy. But all of a sudden, if somebody jumps in with you, it becomes a little bit easier. Yeah, better sound effects, too. Maybe we should put a drum at your feet, and you can, play at the same time. Yeah. There's something to this idea of taking on a burden and a responsibility. And to find, you're getting a little weak, Nate. Why? Keep that up. Push that up. There you go. But here's the thing. It's work. And to find joy, to find pleasure, to find enthusiasm in work, you have to pick an ideal to achieve it. Right? It's not just carrying a weight. It's not just doing that. It's not just, well, it could be, maybe this weight that you're holding is something like, I'm going to get in shape. I'm going to make myself better. Or maybe I'm going to work on my finances because I'm in debt. These are all positive things. These are necessary things because if you get yourself out of debt, you can actually help other people. If you do something, maybe you're going to help somebody else. That's a beneficial thing. Those are good things to carry, a good burden to carry. But what's the highest burden you could possibly carry? I'll take that. What's the highest possible burden you can carry? What's the noblest thing that you could think of, like this is the best thing that I could do with my life? The highest ideal. There's a book that my mentor gave me, David Quartz. He gave me this 25 years ago, maybe 30. This was a book that most people in the church world knew, most people in the church world read. It is a book, a devotional of 365 days. And every day you would read this. March 6th, March 7th, March 8th. Every day you would read this. And it says, the title of the book, My Utmost for His Highest. Every day the idea was I wake up so that I can give my all, and that my greatest, most noblest ideal that I want to shoot for is to serve and glorify the King of the universe. There's nothing more important than that. Nothing. The highest ideal that I could shoot for is the service of God in everything that I do. We currently live in a culture that says, what can I get? As opposed to, what can I offer? The higher the goal that we set, the heavier the weight, the more joy we actually find as we're pushing this up, as the more success that we find of the things happening around us. And I've found that there are two things that bring ultimate joy in my life. One is to know God fully. And I don't mean just intellectually. We've talked emotionally. But to know God, we've said the Hebrew word for to know is yada. Yada, yada, yada. Yada. Which is the full range of emotions that we have as a human being. I want to know God in my anger towards Him. I want to know God in my love for Him, in the way that I express my happiness with Him, in the feelings that I feel of success, but also the feelings that I feel in fear. I want to know God fully in those moments. I want Him to know who I am in those moments, and I want to know Him in the same way. And the second thing that brings ultimate joy is when I serve Him. Every day, every hour, every minute. In fact, as I was reading through all of this different stuff, it just started to explode. All of this information started popping up everywhere. And as I was looking at just the word enthusiasm, what does it mean to live a life of enthusiasm? I was pointed to the idea that enthusiasm comes from a Greek word, two Greek words. The Greek word is entheos. What's theos? Anybody would know the word theos in Greek? Abby, you know you're Greek, come on. What? Yeah. Enthusiasm means the word in God. We are enthusiastic when we are in God, when God is in us, when He is flowing us. There should be something seen in us, and that thing that is seen is enthusiasm. And what is being seen is that God is in us. The Hebrew word is zerazut, which I found in the Hebrew and in the Jewish realm, that zerazut is the highest, the foundation of all character traits. In fact, they said every commandment that we do, every good deed that we do should be done with enthusiasm. And if you don't do it with enthusiasm, you have tainted the deed. You've made it, kind of broken. Kevin, I'll put you on the spot. I'm not going to make you read, though. But Kevin has done something that has inspired me over this last several weeks. He shows up, except for this weekend, he shows up every Saturday before I do. And he's already getting the chairs out. And every time that I get here, he's got a smile on his face and he's happy. And he's like, hey man, I'm getting these chairs out because I want to listen to the music. And he'll sit back here and he'll just listen to the music, and he's got an enthusiasm and excitement to be here. He wants to be here an hour and a half early. That's enthusiasm. The opposite of enthusiasm, interestingly enough, in the Hebrew, is laziness. Laziness is the natural inclination of man, which is such a struggle for us because even though it's our natural inclination, it's the one thing that leads us to destruction. To pick up your responsibility, to pick up this burden, this weight, it's work. But then that sent me on a whole new trail. Because you know this passage. How many times have we talked about this? Genesis 2, verse 5. Now no shrub of the field was yet on the earth, and no plant of the field had yet sprung up, for Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Elohim, had not sent rain on the earth, and there was no man to till the ground. Man, somebody's got to work this. somebody has to take care of this ground. Somebody's got to work it and make this stuff take shape. And then he goes on and talks about all this stuff. And verse 15, the very first thing that God tells man, this is what you're to do. Here's what I want you to do. The very first thing. And Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh Elohim took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. The very first thing God says, your role is to work. Now remember who the audience is hearing this. There's a bunch of slaves who've spent their entire life under slavery making bricks, working 7 days a week as hard as they can. They're just like, I just want to break, God. Now, can we get into the desert and can we just like relax and chill out and like take us to the promised land? We're going to put our feet up under the palm trees and drink the milk and honey that you talked about. It's going to be great. And he says, yeah, that's going to be great. And here, let me tell you your story of your background. The very first thing I created you to do was what? To work. But as we've looked at this word work, it comes from the Hebrew word avad, which is the same word that we use for avodah, which is what, Walt?
Worship, service.
Work, worship, and service. We were created so that our work can be worship to God. This is the greatest ideal that we find joy, fulfillment, happiness, contentment. I mean, why would Paul say this in Colossians? He says, in all the work that you are doing, work the best that you can. Work as if you were doing it for the Lord, not for people. I mean, what if you showed up at work every day, you're like, you know what, this latte that I'm about to make, it's not for Susan who ordered it, it's for God because the image of God is in her. Or this can be for God. I'm going to do this the best of my ability so that this will be for God. Even though her name's Susan, I'm going to act as though I'm doing this for him. Or serving food, or writing a report, or creating a budget. Whatever this is, this budget is for God. So I'm going to make it the best that I can be every single day. What if you were to live your life with that mindset? Now, remember verse 15. And God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work, to avodah it, and to guard it. Do you remember what the word for guard was? It was samar. Samar is to guard. It was to protect. It was to protect something as though your life depended upon it. Because if this was eaten or destroyed, you would die. And so here, God says, you're going to worship in this garden, and you need to samar it, because it is worshipful for me. And I've always thought, like, yeah, you have to guard the garden and protect it. But as I was reading this, I was wondering, could it possibly maybe be that it's not the garden that God is talking about protecting, but it's guarding the fact that you have a responsibility, and don't forget to protect that. Don't forget that. Don't get lazy. Don't get complacent. Protect the fact that you have a responsibility and lift that work up every day. That your worship, the mindset that you worship with enthusiasm, should be guarded as though your life depended upon it. Because when you stop living that way, you die. I was reading Matthew chapter 16 this week. And Yeshua in chapter 16 says this, from that time Yeshua began to show his taught ones, his disciples, that it was necessary for him to go to Jerusalem and to suffer much from the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed and be raised on the third day. Wait, you're going where? Jesus, they want to kill you there. Why are we going to Jerusalem? Because this is the will of my Father. Because it's what he wants. And that's the way I live my life. For the highest calling is for him. And every decision I make and every thought that I have and every choice that I act upon, it's for him. He's confronted by the rock, Peter. He says, Kepha said to him and began to rebuke him. Be kind, master. This shall not be. You should not go to Jerusalem. But he turned and said to Kepha, get behind me, Satan. You are a stumbling block to me. For your thoughts are not of those of God, but are the thoughts of men. Man. Get behind me, Peter. Get behind me, Satan. Your thoughts are not the thoughts of the kingdom. We live in a world that is self-absorbed and selfish. The kingdom is upside down to all of that. God's love for us doesn't make sense. And a lot of times his will for us doesn't make sense. And how many times do I feel like God's saying, get behind me, Satan. That's not what I want you to do. You have other plans. You have other things that I'm expecting of you. Which is why Yeshua then finishes up with this statement. Then Yeshua said to his disciples, if anyone wishes to come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever wishes to save his life shall lose it, and whoever loses his life for my sake shall find it. For what is a man profited if he gains all the world and has all the money and all the Ferraris and all the cars and all the stuff, but he loses his own life? Or what shall a man give in exchange for his life? You want to find joy and happiness, fulfillment in life? Do you want to experience the presence of God in everything that you do and all of the emotions that you possibly can? You want to feel what this love can do in your heart? Pick up your cross. Pick up this burden. Pick up this noble ideal. Stop living according to what the world says. This is how you should live your life. And this is where you'll find happiness. Start living for his desires that don't make sense, that don't match what the world says. Live your life enthusiastically. Live your life in God. Live your life saying, I'm going to wake up today and I'm going to serve you, God, with joy and enthusiasm and pleasure, because I serve at the pleasure of the King in everything that I do. And that's where you find happiness, and that's where you find joy. And that's how we turn this world of darkness that is heading into a place of anxiety and depression and all of these things, and we turn that mindset and we face it up, and if everybody is pointing 100% up, everything will change. But it begins with you. Each person has to make that decision, that choice. Are you willing to pick this up? Father, we thank you for this morning. We thank you for an opportunity to wake up early and to bless you on this day of rest. This day that you've given us, we have an opportunity to sing to you, to learn from you, to bless those in this community, to live a life of joy serving you in everything that we do. I pray, Father, that our hearts can be directed 100% to you. Convict us of our selfishness. May we be reminded of what Yeshua said to Peter, get behind me, Satan, for your thoughts are not the thoughts of the kingdom. Remind us of these things, Father, so that we can pursue you and find joy and love in all that we do. Amen.